Chris Mannix joins us. How you doing, Chris?
What's going on, guys?
Let's start with that. NBC has basketball again. It seems like, speaking of boomers, everybody's excited. It's like this retro thing. How excited are you to be part of that?
It's great. I mean, I was at the opener in Oklahoma City last night, and I don't think that NBC could have asked for a better return to NBA broadcasting with the, not just the fact that the game went to double overtime, but that was a game between two elite Western Conference teams that both look like they wanted this game as much as they wanted a Game 7 in the playoffs. So I'm excited to see all the things NBC is going to do. And I mean, like everyone else, like I think the return of Round Ball Rock and all the nostalgic things that NBC is doing on their broadcast is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, it's also not bad when you get a national voice like Mike Tirico calling the game. And oh, by the way,
Sure.
you work with Michael Jordan, who's there telling a story about, not having shot a free throw in 30 years and not letting a bunch of kids down by nailing that. Like just the return even of that competitive drive alone was spectacular. But switching over to competitive drive for your Boston Celtics this year, Chris, what have you heard league wide about what people expect from a team that obviously lost a lot of its size, made a bunch of offseason moves in transition, and their superstar is not back for at least several months?
Well, it's interesting. Like, my expectations for the Celtics have been pretty low. I mean, I've looked at the talent drain like everybody else, and even though the wing positions are pretty well stocked, it's just hard to win when you're playing such unproven guys in your front court like the Celtics are planning on playing. But when I talk to executives and coaches league-wide, there's a lot more optimism about Boston's chances to be in that playoff mix this year. And their reasons are usually twofold. It's one, and it's a little bit abstract, but I keep hearing from coaches like it's hard to knock the winning out of a winner. And this team for the last 7 years has been enormously successful. Guys like Jaylen Brown and Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, all they've known is winning. So even in a situation where they're, a little more undermanned than they have been in the past, they're still going into these games expecting to win and knowing how to win. And the other variable is that the Eastern Conference is just ungodly bad. I mean, I was watching the game between Oklahoma City and Houston last night. Like, the West is going to have games like that all season long. They're just going to be rock fights between two highly competitive teams in that conference. The East, I mean, you could probably drop like the 9th or 10th best team in the West into the East, and that team would have a legitimate chance of coming out. So, Boston's just going to have a much easier pathway to one of those mid-level playoff seeds than they would, playing out in the West. So that's a long way of saying, like, the people that know better than I do, the head coach, and I had this conversation with the head coach just last night, they believe that the Celtics are going to be really competitive.
Along those lines, what do you believe, Chris, and maybe what have you heard about what people are expecting from Jaylen Brown as he gets his opportunity to be the centerpiece, the guy that's the lead dog here?
Yeah, I think an all-NBA season is in play for Jaylen Brown. I mean, he's going to get all the opportunities that players in this position are afforded. His shot attempts are going to go up. His statistics across the board are going to go up. He's going to get a real chance to spread his wings, so to speak, and become, kind of a star that he believes and many people believe he's going to be. If there's one thing I would watch out for with Jaylen is that, in addition to, being the star of this team now with Tatum out, he's going to get all those defenses that were, geared towards Tatum. And that's going to be a challenge for him to adapt to. It's been enormously successful for Jaylen as that kind of 1A guy in Boston. Now that he's being expected to carry the load, defenses are smart. They're going to load up on him. They're going to send multiple defenders at him. He's going to get the best wing defender every single night. So I don't expect it to be a easy season for Jaylen, but I do expect his numbers to go through the roof.
Chris, have you heard anything about Jason Tatum's timeline? Obviously, that's going to become one of the most discussed, speculated upon stories in Boston sports over the next couple of months, along with, can Drake may keep this up? Will the Patriots make the Super Bowl? So, we've heard everything from it could be December, could be January. Should we limit those anticipations? Anything you've heard?
Yeah, I would reduce the expectations for December for sure. And probably January. I mean, this is just not an injury that, even when you're medically cleared, there's going to be a ramp up, a significant ramp up before you can get out onto the court. All I know is that when I talk to people around the league that know Tatum and people in Tatum's camp, he's going to try to play. Like, he's going to try to get back. And, look, some of it, as he's talked about, is about kind of mentally putting himself into a place where he can get up every day, go to rehab 6 days a week, and work towards something. But there's also a part of him that is looking around at the conference and saying, look, if we're in the mix, when I get back, maybe after the All-Star break, there's no reason we still can't win the Eastern Conference, even with the depletion of talent that they've had with this team. So I don't think December is realistic. I don't think January is realistic. But once that All-Star break comes and goes, I think it's going to be a discussion, and we're going to have to see where the Celtics are as a team before they decide whether or not to let him come back.
Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated, NBC TV, here on WEEI Afternoons. You mentioned the sort of big three, the holdover three, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard. If we look further down the roster, who are we going to fall in love with? If this team is successful, who are we going to be like, wow, he's a better player than I thought he was?
I mean, it has to be Anthony Simons. Simons has been a prolific scorer in his time in the NBA. He has been equally as prolifically bad defensively. He's among the worst defensive players in the league. It's just a fact. Look, he's going to get opportunities here, and he's also going to be put in a situation, playing in a backcourt with White and Pritchard and Jaylen, that being a mediocre defender is just not going to be acceptable. No matter how many points you're able to put up. They have expectations within the Celtics that you are going to at least be serviceable on that end of the floor. So if this team rises, above the expectation that they're going to be middle of the pack or below this year in the conference, you're going to see a guy like Anthony Simons be a part of it. And look, I never discount what a guy can do in a contract year. Contract years are enormously successful for players in the NBA. They always tend to put something together that looks pretty damn impressive. And, Simons is playing for that next big deal, and I would assume you're going to get the very best out of him.
Okay, so let's say, unfortunately, things don't go the way that we want to see them go, and the Celtics are they're below 500 team. If there was anyone that could be a potential surprise trade candidate for the Celtics if they decide to go a bit more rebuild than compete for the postseason, who do you think that could be?
I just don't see the Celtics going rebuild regardless of where they are in the standings this year, because everything this team is doing is being geared towards the 26-27 season. They've got their core intact, and if they sink in the standings, they still have control over their 2026 first-round draft pick, and that can either be an asset they could use to get a cheap rotation player potentially, or put it into a trade to get something else back, more experience back that can help them. I actually think if anything, I think there's a decent chance the Celtics are proactive in terms of getting a better player, even if that better player doesn't help them, win the conference in the short term. I'll give you an example. Like the guy that I'm probably eyeing the closest over the next couple of months is Lauri Markkanen in Utah. Utah has no use for Lauri Markkanen. He's 28 years old, which basically makes him a fossil in that Jazz rotation. And that's going to be a guy that I believe is going to be on the market as we head into that February trade deadline. Look, the Celtics, they just lost Kristaps Porzingis. Lauri Markkanen is a younger, sort of different version of Kristaps Porzingis, a 6'10", 6'11" guy who can play both front court positions. That would be a guy that I would aggressively pursue if I was Boston, looking at the 26-27 season. Like he makes a lot of money, $46 million on his contract this year. So the Celtics would have to cobble together some salaries to ultimately make it work. And believe me, the Jazz are looking for real return on Lauri Markkanen. But if they can't get it, in the days leading up to the trade deadline, and if they just want to get off that salary that Markkanen has, the full max contract he's in the first year of, could, old friend Austin Ainge, turn to his old boss, Brad Stevens, and say, all right, well, we'll take Simon's contract, some expirings, and whatever draft capital you can dump into a deal. So that to me is the most interesting guy that's potentially out there, and someone I think would be perfect for the Celtics as they look at the next 3 or 4 years.
Chris, there was one point where there was sort of a joke floating around that Joe Mazzulla is going to go hockey lines, and he's going to run so much that it's just going to be 5 guys in, 5 guys out. He kind of poo-pooed that, but then I was listening to Wick Grossbeck on our station this morning on the Greg Hill Show, and he said he has seen it in camp. They have run like he's never seen any team run, that they're going to use 11, 12 guys per night. What do you think this is going to look like, this new look run-and-gun Celtics? What's it going to look like?
I mean, respectfully, whenever a team is bad, they say they're going to play fast. Like death taxes and we're going to play fast. Like I've heard that so many times over the years. Everybody wants to play fast. Everybody wants to have a high-paced team. That doesn't mean I doubt that they're going to try to do that. I just don't think that is a cure-all for some of the weaknesses that they have. Look, if you're saying you're going to play fast, you're effectively saying you're going to play small, and that's probably the Celtics' best bet, with like Sam Hauser playing power forward and whoever it is from the name is Keita, Chris Boucher, Xavier Tillman group playing at the 5. That enables you to play faster and maybe get some of these teams that are bigger to have to play down to you. But I mean, just look at the history. Look at some of the teams that are out there that have been, average or worse. You always hear before a season, we're going to play fast. We're going to play fast. And more often than not, it doesn't, lead to a surprising amount of success.
And Chris, last one for me. Have you ever been forced to play basketball against a bunch of former professionals or coaches on the spur of the moment? Because one of our guys here was involved in the now infamous media versus coaches and former players game over at the Auerbach Center. The nail biter 57-4. Some people described it as, quote, I felt like I was playing basketball in a tornado, and, quote, it went exactly like you thought a 57-4 game should go.
I mean, I had Jay King on my podcast, and he called it the most humiliating athletic moment of his life. And, just watching the clips of it, I can see that. What I do find amusing, and I've brought this up to other coaches around the league, is that we're seeing it kind of either being duplicated. I think Denver did it, or teams talking about duplicating it, but they're doing it in kind of a fun, let's have a good time type of way. Joe Mazzulla wanted to hurt the media. Like, Joe Mazzulla wanted to humiliate them in that moment and show them just how tough the game really is. That's unique to Joe Mazzulla. So I feel for my media brethren, man, that had to go out there and get pressed by a bunch of elite ex-college players who are still very capable of playing at that level. That was all the clips that I've seen. That was a very tough watch.
All right, Chris, before we let you go, can I get a record prediction and playoff seeding if you think they're going to make the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, it might require a trip through the play-in to get there. Right now, I think I've got them probably at the 7 at the moment, based on what I've seen in the preseason in the Eastern Conference. I do think their margin for error is incredibly slim, though. Like, Jaylen Brown sounds like this hamstring's not a big deal, but they are one lengthy Jaylen Brown absence away from, Wizards Hornets potential territory. Like, they don't have the roster depth that they had in the past to overcome, potential injuries. But I'm buying more and more into this idea that it's hard to knock the winning out of winners. And I think they're going to be tough outs for a lot of teams. And given that they're going to play a lot of teams that aren't as competitive as them in the conference, don't have the fierceness that they have, I think they're going to surprise some people. And record-wise, I can see 500, maybe a little over 500, and that gets them into the bottom half of the playoff bracket.
All right, Chris, we appreciate you joining us on opening night here in Boston. Enjoy rubbing elbows with Air Jordan for the rest of the season on NBC.
Yeah, that's basically like saying that the security guard at the White House works for the president. That's not quite.
It's a great gig, man. Congrats.
Name only.
Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Chris. See ya.
You got it, guys.